Okay, so for this exam technique, question, is trying to highlight the importance of how specific your preparation needs to be. So I've set these exam technique questions in the context of sport, and considering how an elite athlete prepares for a big championship game or a match, in this one context of tennis, that if a certain tennis player like Serena Williams is preparing to play an opponent, and they were to study a videotape of a different opponent, that probably would not be a good idea. So in this sort of analogy that I try to make to these sporting events is the context of what a student might do in Business 114 or 115. That if they're scheduled to take my exam or somebody else's exam, but they spend time reviewing questions prepared by a different instructor or from a different university or from places like Khan Academy. I'm not saying that those places are not good resources, but I would not include them as your primary resource. So you are preparing to take an exam, you got to look at the instructor or instructors and try to sort of examine the sort of styles of those particular instructors. And your number one resource for the preparing for an exam is definitely the practice exams. So the practice exams are a blueprint for the real exam in terms of the layout, in terms of the styles of questioning, the number of questions per topic. The exams prepared for this course have been tailored to sort of give you a sense of what the real exam might look like. So I highly recommend reviewing practice exams as early as possible. I know some students prefer to leave the practice exams until the night before. That is completely your prerogative and your choice to do so, but it's not my recommendation. My recommendation is to download the practice exams as soon as possible, as soon as they're available online, and use them as an insight to your professor's sort of style. Get familiar with the layout of the exam, the number of questions, such that when you do face the real exam should not actually be a surprise. So opening up the exam, you should be very familiar what the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so questions and so on are going to be on. You should begin to develop a game plan, like no different than an athlete does. Is that I'm sure they figure out what is the tendencies of their opponent, what do they tend to do under pressure. So in terms of you want to set up a game plan, is your strengths for the first exam, kinematics rather than forces, or what's your strengths? You start with I would recommend that you start with your strengths and work towards your weaknesses. If you download the exams early, you can get a sense of what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Do you want to start with a free response first? But again, I think it's good exam preparation to know all of the answers to these questions before you go in and start the exam. Is that that will in a sense tend to lower anxiety. You have a game plan, you stick to the game plan, you have a strategy in terms of what questions you will answer first, what order. I recommend you start from the easiest questions, the ones you find easiest to do, and you work towards the more difficult questions as the time moves on. But the key thing, and going on a tangent here, the key thing though is that in this particular context, start with examining questions prepared by your instructor, and not before you start moving into online resources. So again, looking at the clicker questions of the instructor, looking at the homework questions set by the instructor, looking at the key. I would as a hierarchical structure, I would place the practice exam number 1, then a sort of equally at 2 the homework assignments and the clicker questions, then the practice problems, the larger set of practice problems, and then possibly then go into other resources, whether it's at Clue or at Khan Academy or elsewhere. But the key thing is to start with the practice exam.